First off, I guess I would just love to hear about where you're at now, and maybe just give me like the quick thing of just walking me through how you made it in self-publishing and now with your own publishing house.
Sure, absolutely. And once again, thank you for the invitation to do this, Yvonne. Um, so when we initially started Mountaindale Press, I had been writing for about 2 years. So back in 2016, I put out my first book. I was going to college at the time. I had just gotten out of the army, and had large chunks of time that I didn't know what to do with. Like throughout my life, it had always been filled with work, with other things to do, and it was almost like a mini retirement. It was very strange. So while I was at university at the time, I started writing in those gaps of time, and just really got into what I was doing. I've always been a huge fan of fantasy, of Piers Anthony. I was a huge author that I would read when I was a lot younger. Just the puns and the things that make you groan really always resonated with me, and I really think that has impacted my own writing really heavily. Um, but I started writing, and I had so much experience with reading that it really just translated well into putting down exactly the words that I wanted to put out there, right? So which is nice, because when I'm editing, usually it's a very quick pass. It's very like I usually get down almost exactly what I want to say on the first go round.
Like a Stephen King approach.
Yeah, kind of more so. Yeah. I've seen people that say you want to throw out your first million words, and I don't agree with that. Like I just say, write what you want to write and just make sure you want to write it, and if you do that, keep it, put it out there, make it better, whatever it is. So yeah, turning that into a career took quite a while. So quite a while, but I say that, but it took a lot of work for sure. The first book went out, and it started being picked up and well received in the genre that I had been writing for, which was really nice. And when I saw how well it was being received, I looked at various tactics for gaining readerships and doing better just as an author. And I just started writing faster, like more words faster is kind of my motto now. And more quality words faster, I should say. So over the next 2 months, 2, 3 months, so let's see, October of 2016, November and December, I wrote 2 more books. So I wrote a book in November, wrote a book in December. And so I had all of those out by January of 2017. So my first book took months, like I would say probably 4 or 5, 6 months. The second book took 1 month. The third book took 1 month, and it was just a power writing fest. Lots of coffee, very little sleep.
Why was that? Were you already gaining some recognition by then?
So yeah, had gained a little bit of recognition, and like I said, that first book had been so well received. Um, I have a degree in computer science, right? So in building and creating systems, in turning like figuring out how algorithms work, all this stuff. So it's computer programming is the thing. And so when I looked at Amazon, I said, okay, well, a lot of what they do in terms of rank, in terms of all this other stuff, is entirely algorithm based. And the best favor is to have quality content that people want, right? So if you are making money, that means Amazon is making money, right? If you're selling through Amazon, and if you're making money for Amazon, Amazon wants to make more money, and so what they'll do is they'll push your books, right? So like if you are the bestseller or the top rated, whatever it is, you'll see that stuff first, because that has the greatest chance of selling. One of the things that we knew, or kind of definitely assume, one of the things that we assume is that if you have more content and people go from book 1, love it, rate it well, go to book 2, love it, rate it well, usually they'll go to book 3, right? And so with the algorithms, what we were trying to do was get book one, book two, book three, all within 30-ish days, for what, in the author communities is known as the 30-day cliff. And that's kind of the idea that after 30 days, if you have shown that you're prolific, if you've shown that you're well received, like with reviews and all this other stuff, usually you maintain high positions on the search charts, right? So book out within 30 days of each other, which was not super easy. Just to get those out there and get those reviews in our favor, get those algorithms working in our favor. And after that point, so after I had those 3 books out, I kind of looked back at all the comments, all the reviews, all the things that were negative, and I said, okay, well, what are people saying about this that I can use to make what I do better? So from that point, I got an editor. I hadn't had one before that, so my words were only my words and not brushed into prettiness. I had gone with hand-drawn black and white covers for my covers. So I started working on turning those into what they are now, which is much nicer, prettier covers.
I saw that, and yeah, there's definitely a difference there. I mean, the new ones
Yes.
look like that you could see them in a bookstore in the fantasy section.
Exactly. And that's really what we were going for. We had our niche audience, and we had reached, right? And if we wanted to expand further into the more general reading population, we had to be able to market to them. And that's where those covers came from. So yeah, so that, I mean, that's so we started with that. I saw what we could do better. I actually started a new series at that point after getting 3 books out, because I want to always have 2 going at a time, because that way it's not done, right? So the series is like, Dakota is no longer writing, it's done. Okay, well, he has nothing else out there, I guess that's it. Go, and then they move on to someone else, right? I always have at least 1 series go. I know that I'm constantly working on the next thing, and they'll check back for updates. So while I have, complete series, and we'll have more complete series as we go forward, people know that there's more coming soon, right? And so that was kind of the start of how we built up our marketing campaigns, was with relational marketing. We go out there and we try to get people involved, and we try to talk to people and really truly become friends with them, and do nice things and be good people. And that resonated super well with our community. And so that, so 2 years after I first started writing, we took all of that experience and all of the courses that we took, all the research that we did, and we looked at it and we said, how much have we actually spent on this? How much my current writing speed? And so the idea behind that was not a huge amount. Like, we can't use the same marketing data a year from first time we learn about it, right? Because by then it's oversaturated, the market has moved on, there's better ways to do things. And so I said, if we want to really use the effort that we're putting into learning this, what we need to do is be putting out more books. And since I can't write 100% of the time, if I want to, have a business, if I want to, be able to know what we need to do, what we should do is start putting out other people's books. And so that's, we took authors right away, and we worked with them to kind of mimic what I had done with my stuff. It's obviously it's their content, it's their IP, but using the methodology, the workflow, kind of the ideas behind what we had researched for my own work, we were able to really boost them high really, really fast. And so with those 3 people, as kind of the social proof that what I do doesn't work just for me, we were able to start really start pushing into our community as the premier litrpg and game lit publisher in our genre. So it's really nice.
Yeah, no, it's amazing how you've been able to, expand it kind of exponentially. I guess for those who don't know, what is litrpg?
Sure. What's funny is I actually had to write this up for someone earlier today. So I have a direct message, just perfect for this. Yeah, right. So lit RPG is a progression fantasy or science fiction that is bound by the rules of a video game. It uses a hard magic system that allows the at those rules and ensures consistency and allows for the mitigation of power creep.
Okay, so I've had a little bit of experience with Dungeons and Dragons, and I've written
Sure,
a little bit, sort of a looser version of that,
sure,
with just without the D&D dice, with just regular
sure.
dice. How does that compare? Because that's the closest thing that I can think of. Okay, all right, there we go. Yeah.
Oh, there we go. Sorry, I got muted somehow.
Just for a
Yeah,
second.
I use dice when I am writing my books, right? So I really like to keep everything where the system matters more than the story, right? So I can't break the rules as the author just to progress a scene, because otherwise, that's where power creep comes in. That's, like, oh, I'm the son of the game developer, and therefore I have this special ability that allows me to walk through the biggest monsters to get the best. No, it doesn't happen. It's supposed to be very realistic, like if you follow, like if you play by the rules and you push the bounds of them as much as you can, just like really trying to be the best character that you can be, min-maxing whatever it is, other people should be able, like if they were writing in the same world, they should be able to follow those same rules and get the same result, right? And kind of scientific method sort of with the writing. I definitely started out as a DM, right? So like I was big into D&D when I was younger in college. I actually started writing after everyone else graduated and moved away. So I joined university at 21 after 4 years to pretty active in the Army, and then I had 4 years in the reserves after that, where I was had a lot more free time than I was used to. So yeah.
Right. So then came this hobby that definitely takes up a lot of time now.
Yeah, definitely turned into a full-blown career. So
Right. So yeah, speaking of that, how was that, or describe that moment of, oh, I could actually do this instead of my day job, or was there a breakthrough moment like that?
Sure. So I had been working at a company as a programmer for about 2 years by this point, kind of as an intern at the start, and then full time by the time I eventually left it. And so I had 2 years at that company, and one of the issues that I was having there was that they wanted me to stay on at intern pay and move into a salaried position. And I'm sure most people have had that experience where you start working for someone and they realize that you realize that you've moved up in what you can offer, and that pay doesn't follow. And 1 month, 4 books in, I was I had sold tens of thousands of copies of these first 4 books, and I got a paycheck from Amazon that was almost what I could make in a year, what I could make in a year at this company at my current pay rate. And so I went to the boss and I was like, hey man, like, I have my degree, I have all this stuff, I have all this experience, because that's what it's what I did in the Army as well, right? So I was like, I have all this, like, I don't need you to blow me away with salary, but I need you to meet me halfway or something. And short answer was no. So the short answer coming from that was no. And so I gave him my walk-in papers and headed out to do this more full time. Now I probably would have stayed, but I was married. I had just had my daughter, right? So I have a one kid, and she's wonderful. At the time when I was doing all this, she was 3 months old. And if you know what intern pay is like, it's pretty hard to have a lovely wife and daughter and house and live as an intern.
Well, there's
So
barely enough just for yourself. Yeah.
right. Well, it was, I would get a check and hand it right to the daycare, like that was almost to the penny what
Wow.
daycare costs. So I worked just so my kid would be taken care of by someone else, and I hated that. So one day I went home and I was like, hey, hon, I'm going to stop my full-time job and do this because it's more fun and it's, profitable and stuff. And she said, what? So, we had that conversation, and, I left my previous job and went full-time doing that. And it was pretty fun, to, 3-month-old, easy. Like, she slept most of the time and I would type, and when she was awake, I'd play. And, so, I'm just living the life of a trophy husband, man. It was pretty awesome. So my wife came home one day, about a month into this, looked around at the clean house, dinner on the table, happy baby, my next book halfway done. She goes, nope, you're living my dream. No, enough of this. So she came home and left her
for right. Okay.
Yeah. So she left her career. So she has her doctorate in research molecular biology. Right. So she's a much more intelligent woman than I am as a person. And so she said, okay, well, I'm going to come home. If this works and you can do it, I can be there too. So that actually worked out really well, because then we split what we were doing, right? So instead of me working entirely to write the books, publish them, do the marketing, do the research, the market research, the advertising, all the stuff, finding keywords, all of the glut of stuff that actually happens to make a book go out. I just gave that all to her and just focused on writing. And so
that's
we
great. That I think
man,
creative people would kill for that. Yeah.
Really, that's what a publisher is for, man. Like the sheer amount of work that goes into the back end of getting a book out and successful, because there's a difference. I put out books and they did okay, right? I mean, they blew away all expectations, but also when we did things right, the revenue increased on that by 300 to 500% in a month. It was like when we were doing the things that actually were starting to capture audience instead of just what I could manage to do in the spare time that I could give it. Yeah, it turned into a behemoth that I'm hoping continues growing, So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know you're no longer self-publishing on Amazon, but
well, I am. It's through Mountaindale, which is my company. So to me, I'm still self-publishing, right? It's still all of my own research, still on my own time. So it's an interesting thing. Like, I'm an independent publisher, but I'm also self-published. So it's kind of a strange thing. So
yeah, you sort of upgraded from the status that most people think of when they think of self-publishing on Amazon. And okay, so speaking of that, what are the challenges of doing this? Because it seems like you need to be a sort of one person publishing company when you first start out.
Right. So what I tell people, and what I even tell our own authors, is that if you are writing and you're trying to make it a career, then you are a business, right? So basically, Mountaindale, for every author that we have, each of them have to be basically their own business, in a literal sense, right? Most of them are LLCs, right, or self proprietors, so on, like this, for payment purposes. But what actually happens when you have to, when you're publishing a book, is a lot of people look at it and they say, oh, you wrote words, right? You put words on paper, you put it out there. How hard can it be to publish a book, right? And, that's pretty standard attitude toward it. And that's not wrong. And you could say that about most jobs. Like, hey, you're an advertiser, you just make pretty images, put it up on the internet, and it sells for people, And then you look at all of the experience and time that actually went into allowing them to be able to do that in a timely manner. So with publishing, we do have like the full service, right? So we do ebook, paperback, audiobook, right? And working on hardcovers. It's a fun thing. But so when you look at that, the actual process for putting a book out is you write the book, and then the author's job is mostly done, right? But you still have to have cover art, typesetting, which is the, making the image or the title and all that fun stuff go over the art, look nice, and work with the art. It's a whole 2 separate jobs, which is just weird to me. It makes sense, but yeah, 2 different skill sets. The actual manuscript itself has to be developmentally edited to make sure that there are no inconsistencies within the story, and that it will reach the audience that it's intended for. After that, it still has to be copy edited to ensure that the words themselves don't have terrible grammar, so on and so forth, right? So that's 2 rounds of editing by itself. We also usually give it to a select group of fans of the genre to read through and give us feedback on. So there still might be more changes after those 2 rounds of editing. From there, it goes to publishing, like with for the book. It also goes off to a narrator, right? So the narrator reads the book, does all of the work that they have to do. We then have it go through our quality assurance and through our mastering process, right, to make sure that it's the best quality book that can go out. So sound engineers, all that stuff that goes out. So now the books are out, right? And so hooray, the book is out. Now we start advertising, right? So we start marketing, we start advertising. So every social media that you can think of, we try to have a presence on. Every place that we can do advertising, we try to do advertising on. And that list grows slowly. Like we try to get really good at advertising on one thing, kind of figure out what we're trying to do and do it really well, move on to the next one, build up over time. And yeah, so we have, for one person to have their book out, it employs something like 10 to 12 people, which is nuts, and that's not even going into stuff like buying ISBNs or copywriting our book, whatever it is, or all the contract work that has to go through with our lawyers to make sure that the contracts we give people are fair and that they don't do weird things going forward in the future. So it's a massive production pipeline, even for the small amount of authors that we have.
Yeah. So, sorry, how many authors do you have now?
I think we're at 25 active authors, which is pretty great. Yeah.
Okay. And wow, yeah, no, that is quite a lot of people. At what point did you realize that you really needed to start Mountaindale and establish that as a business?
So it was really when we were doing all the research, making all the connections, right? So we made connections with editors and we started getting to know them really well. And I would work with one for this series, one for this one, and then all of a sudden I had nothing for them to do. Trying out so many different artists and getting to know them, so on and so forth, doing research on narrators. I actually went to a audio awards convention just to meet narrators that I could eventually hire on, right? Stuff like that. Like, it's just building all of those connections, doing all that networking. It took a huge amount of time. And then if you don't talk to those people, if you don't, offer employment, all this stuff, they move on. And so we had this huge web of connections of people that we knew, of people that we were working with, that we wanted to work with. And to kind of keep that satisfied and to keep them, making sure that they had income coming into their pockets, right? We had to be able to put books that they could, or to create books that they could, make a profit on. So that's kind of how that all worked. And so turning that into a company was good.
So you're an independent publisher, but you're also on Amazon. And I guess my question is, how do you feel about Amazon's impact on independent booksellers? Sure. How, especially with the pandemic, you can't just really walk into a bookstore any longer.
Sure. Well, so first off, the idea that you could self-publish is frankly a new one. Like Amazon started allowing people to self-publish their books back in 2011, right? It's been 10 years. It's just been 10 years since self-publishing became a market that you could actually succeed in. And that's crazy when you think about it. It went from basically no one can self-publish unless you are incredibly wealthy to 20 million books on Amazon in 10 years, right? That's wild. Anyway, so, standing out is a big thing. So with Amazon though, I think it's awesome. Like what they've done in terms of being able to self-publish your books. Like if you can write an email, you can publish your book, and that's huge, right? Doesn't matter how good or sell, but you can do it, Like, I mean, that's a huge thing. You know, obviously they take a percentage to publish on their platform, and it's a small enough percentage that it's something that people are willing to do, which makes it a viable option. And so I really think that Amazon has had a great impact on people, right? I know that a lot of publishing companies are unhappy about that, right? If you look at the really big booksellers and the really big publishers, yeah, they're not probably super happy that one company came in and just like swept up the vast majority of all authors ever, right? But
Or all, and you name the industry and they probably swept it up.
right,
Yeah.
right. But you know, if one company is going to let me control what is my business, and use them as a distribution platform like that, absolutely, right? And I think that especially with books like ebooks and paperbacks, you know, they've really made it simple and straightforward for people to be able to self-publish. And by the way, like, even though I own a publishing company, I still recommend people to self-publish, right? Um, for multiple reasons. The main thing is, if you want it to be a career, it's probably the fastest way to earn large sums of money if your book does well, right? So kind of the three different levels are with like self-publishing, you have the most control, but obviously that is the most risk, right? You have nothing built up. You have no infrastructure. You have no support team. It's 100% on you. So all the wins are yours. All of the losses are yours. And that can be really hard. It has the biggest opportunity to make the most money almost exclusively. Right. And so I really do push people, like, even when people come in, they say, hey, I want to work with Mountaindale. I said, have you considered self-publishing? Because it really is the best option for long-term, well, for short-term career in all reality. Because the fact of the matter is that it is a huge amount of work. And if it's a career, if it's a lifelong career, like I intend it to be for me, I can't do that alone. Right. I have a support squad just for me. Right. Like, I have employees that focus entirely on my stuff. And unless you make it really big, really fast, it's really hard to build that team up for yourself. Independent publishing is a good middle ground because, like someone like me, we have good connections, we have good process, we have standardized procedures that we can do, people that we can go to that we know will return a high quality piece for us to use, right? And that means it's great for the author because they make more money usually than they can alone, right? You know, unless they do something that makes them very, very successful, right? Like, it happened with me. It could happen with someone else, but I mean, even now it feels like winning the lottery to myself, man. It really does. The
So I
work
guess,
lottery, lots of work, but still lottery.
oh, right, a lottery that you then built up. Yeah,
Yep.
absolutely. So
Yep.
I guess, you know, if you were to go back and do it again, you'd
Mhm.
do it the same way then, wouldn't you?
I would do even more on my own, actually. Like, if I had the knowledge that I had now for how to do things, how well it would be received, how profitable certain aspects of it could be, I would definitely do it 100% more on my own. I would build my company in the same way. Absolutely, I would. But when I first got started with like self-publishing, I didn't realize how big of a market audiobooks would be, for instance, right? And so I worked with someone else to produce audiobooks. And while I don't regret that decision, right? Like, I don't regret that I work with them. They're awesome people. I also look at what it could have been if I had just trusted that it was doing well and done it myself. Right. But you know, there's a lot of fear when it's your dollar that you're putting in. You know, if you put in $100 into advertising on one little thing and you get $0 back from those sales, that's a hard thing. I mean, that can break a small brand new business, like even that small amount, you know, because you lose confidence too, which is a terrible thing.
So, what are the do's and don'ts of self-publishing, or maybe just the don'ts? You know,
Sure.
what are some of the pitfalls?
Some of the pitfalls are, there are a lot of people out there that make a lot of promises that they can't deliver on, right? So I know a few people that have put in just massive amounts of money to make their book awesome, but the people that they chose to do it aren't who they should have chosen, right? Whether that's a proofreader or a editor or a artist, something like that. Someone, most self-publishing authors think about publishing a book, right? A single book. So they'll go to an artist and they'll make a beautiful, amazing cover, and then they'll use that for their cover. And two things happen. They don't realize first of all, they don't realize that you also need to own commercial rights to the piece of artwork if you're going to use it for anything other than what you paid for it. So if you want to put that on shirts, if you want to put that on coffee mugs, anything like that, if you don't have the commercial rights, you can't, because you can get sued, right? Secondly is, what if the book does well and you want to turn that into a trilogy or into a longer series? Well, if you haven't worked with that artist to make a deal for multiple covers, they might not have time to make you another cover for literally years, right? And then you might end up working with a different artist who has maybe a similar style, but the likelihood is that you'll have to redo that cover, right? So that's a big thing. If you don't have art styles that are consistent throughout your books, you had to redo them because they just don't look right when they're sitting next to each other on a shelf, or they don't look right in the Kindle app, whatever it is. So that's a big don't, is don't think of just one book out, right? Think of, hey, if this is something I want to do in a serious way, what is that actually going to look like if I'm doing it long term?
In terms of do's, what are the positive, bits of advice that you can give, or any myths that you've seen with advice on this sort of thing?
Oh man, myths. Ooh, oh man, that's crazy.
A do.
So, all right, even like currently, like in my current lifestyle, I'll mention to someone like I'm meeting for the first time, and one of the big questions that everyone asks is, hey, well, what do you do for a living? Right? I'm like, well, oh yeah, I'm an author, right? Yeah, I'm an author. That's what I do for a living. And I get a huge variation of reactions to that. But the big one is that there's a huge stereotype of authors kind of being starving artists, right? Like, hey, I'm an author, and so therefore I haven't eaten this month, right? Like, because I couldn't afford food, and I'm pursuing my craft, and so I'm really throwing myself into it, and I'm just suffering for my art, right? Don't give in to fear, right? So one of my favorite quotes is, everything you have ever wanted is on the other side of fear, right? And ripping away all those safety nets is hard. Putting something out that you've really put a lot of yourself into, with writing, with business, with anything, whatever it is hard, because you never know what the reaction is going to be on that other side, right? You never know, but you want what's there, right? If you want to go out there and make money, and you want to own your business, and you don't want to be beholden to someone else, whatever it is that you actually desire, you have to put in the work, and you have to put aside the fear, because if you get bogged down, you'll stay bogged down, right? You gotta push forward and be awesome, right? And every day you have to wake up and you have to be awesome, and that's a hard thing, because there's always a piece of you that says, man, I'm afraid that I'm not as awesome as I think, as I'm telling myself I want to be. But you just gotta put it aside and drive forward. So that's big deal.
Yeah. I think that is half the battle right there, is just the psychology. Yeah. So I guess I just have a couple more questions. I don't mean to keep you too long, but
it's all good.
What predictions do you have for the future of this industry? I mean, like you said, in 10 years, it's just exploded with millions of self-published books. So, what does the next 10 years potentially look like for the self-publishing world?
It's an interesting thing, because it's trending back towards more larger publishing houses, right? So I think what happened is that the self-publishing industry kind of blew up the traditional publishing industry as it stood, right? But now that there's tens of thousands of new authors yearly, monthly sometimes, the question becomes, how do I stand out, right? How do I make my mark and be visible in this sea of people? And so what you see happening is small small presses like myself, independent publishers, rounding up people that they think can do awesome work and putting them in a company, right? And so it's kind of funny that it's trending back towards larger publishing houses, right?
I guess you mentioned having more leniency with your authors.
Mm-hmm.
How do you find them in the first place? Do you have an open submission where they come to you, or?
No. Tried that once. So what we do is we do have a time period of open submissions, right? A small window where we're like, hey guys, we're accepting submissions and you can submit now, and it will, like, during our planning meetings, right? Because we have to plan out the next fiscal year. We have to plan out the release schedule for the upcoming year, all this stuff. We say, if you want to be considered, send your stuff in. And then in that time period, we'll go over all of those submissions and see who might be a good fit, and then give them a call and tell them about our process and how everything works, and kind of the requirements on them, deadlines and stuff like that. And I tell you what, man, if you walk up to a creative, like a super creative person, and say, hey man, just so you know, we'd love to work with you, but there are deadlines, 80% of them will say, nope, doing it myself.
Wow.
Oh yeah. So that's one of the big filters, actually. The Independent Authors Guild put out statistics in, I think it was 2020, of how many authors were on Amazon were making 6 figures or more, right? And do you have a guess at what that number was?
Probably 100 or something.
No, it was 1,000. Like, you actually
Okay.
said it. You said it. All right. I liked your answer a lot, because most people are like, oh man, there's so many out there doing so many things. There's got to be tons and tons, like thousands and thousands. But there were 1,000, right?
What does 2021 hold for Mountaindale, and what you're working on right now?
Sure. So with what we are going for this upcoming year, I have a plan to put out a massive series and complete it all in 1 year, right? So in 1 year, 12 books, right? And go from start to finish in 1 year. And that's kind of my current business strategy, right? It's like, like, what's the difference between business plan and business strategy? Strategy is telling you how you're going to stay competitive and ahead of other people, your contemporaries in the field. And so what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to draw a large market share, right? So I'm trying to pull in a ton of people with my personal work, so that as they're focused on me, they'll look at what is around me, and what is around me is Mountaindale, my company. And the hope then, obviously, is that as the wave comes in, and the tide rises and it brings all the boats with it, right? And hopefully the tide coming in is lots and lots of new readership, and all the boats that are going up are not just my flagship, but also all of the other ships and schooners and whatever it is. So I'm not a nautical person, but like, all of those come up along with me on that tide, right? And that's the hope. So that's 2022 in a nutshell.